Hello and welcome along to the Property Academy podcast. I'm your host, Steve McKnight.
I'm Andrew Nicol.
And today's show, we're talking about who do you get property investment advice from. Now, look, when you invest in property, you're going to have so many different questions, so many different things to think about. And you're going to want to get a range of opinions from a lot of different people. And that is absolutely what you should do. But where I see a lot of property investors go wrong is they listen to everybody's opinion equally, or they start listening to the wrong people. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. You might be thinking, these guys are just going to tell me that they are the only ones to listen to. They are the way, the truth, and the light. And that is not what we're going to say at all. Because, of course, lots of people have expertise in property, but the main thing is to try and figure out, well, what does each person have expertise in? And so that's what we're going to get into today. But Andrew, as we said, where do most investors go wrong?
So I think the biggest problem is when you give everyone's opinion equal weighting. And although everyone might have an opinion, some of them are going to be more expert than others. And the people that are more expert should carry more weighting when you're probably applying what their opinion is. And it depends on the topic that you're talking about. Now, there's this concept of the Dunning-Kruger effect, where people overestimate their competence on a particular subject. Now, this is when you learn a little bit about a topic. So you go from knowing nothing to learning a little bit, and then you think, I know everything. And this is probably, this is the average 20-year-old, right? They absolutely think, now I'm very knowledgeable, I'm an expert. But then as time goes on and you learn a little bit more about the topic, all of a sudden you start to think, holy hell, there's a whole lot of stuff that I don't actually know. And then you end up in this valley of despair where you realize, actually, maybe I don't know much about this. And then as time goes on and you develop more knowledge of a particular topic, then all of a sudden you get to a point where actually you do become an expert in a particular field.
Yeah, this is called the Dunning-Kruger effect, which came up by two university researchers. And effectively what they found was that when you learn a little bit about a topic, you way overestimate how good you are at it. Like, if you think about any sport you've ever tried, at the start you're absolutely hopeless, but then you learn a technique or two and you think, this is great, I'm absolutely wonderful. So I used to play squash back in the day, right? And the people who were really confident were like F2s and F1s. So that's like just the beginning phases of the grading system. The people who are a little bit further on, they've got much less confidence because they know what they don't know. And so you're more likely to see, somebody who's not as good really lecturing someone about how to play squash the right way, or how to invest in property the right way, or how to manage a property the right way, because they know just enough to be dangerous and so have this massive confidence. And the reason that Dunning-Kruger effect, why that's so important, is because sometimes when you're investing in property or learning any skill, you start to listen to the people who sound the most confident. So you might think, well, I'm just starting out in property, or I'm just starting out in squash or fencing or tennis or whatever sport it is. You can tell I play weird sports. It's so easy to just listen to the person who's the loudest or the most confident. But sometimes, because of the Dunning-Kruger effect, the people who are the most confident, the people who are most willing to give you their advice, actually, they can not know that much more than you. They might be at what we call the peak of Mount Stupid. So that's where you learn a little bit, you're really confident, so you think you're absolutely great. That's being Mount Stupid, because what happens next, you learn a little bit more and you realize how much you don't know. And you think, gosh, this isn't quite as easy as I thought it was going to be, before it starts to recover. And so that's why it's so important to talk about this. And on the show previously, we've talked about Uncle Lester. So where's Uncle Lester in terms of the Dunning-Kruger effect and what we're talking about today, Andrew?
Oh, he's absolutely pitched his tent at the peak of Mount Stupid.
Because he knows a little bit about a topic, whether it be shares or investments or money. So he way overestimates how competent he actually is. And maybe if he learns a little more, he'd start crashing down. So not necessarily the sort of person we're going to talk about. So let's apply this and talk about how we'd actually use this in practice. Now, we're not going to dig too much on real estate agents and say they don't know anything, but let's start with real estate agents and maybe put it into context for us as if it was somebody interested in property investment and they're talking about investing in property with a real estate agent.
So, I mean, I know what you're all thinking. You're probably thinking we're going to say that real estate agents are at the peak of Mount Stupid because, they know what they know, but not necessarily everything. But that's not what I'm going to say. everyone is an expert in a particular area. And so a real estate agent, they're likely to be an expert in their particular suburb that they operate in, or what's selling at the moment, or how people might have added value in that particular street and what the top price achievable in that street is, or what a realistic price is achievable in that street. However, if you're going to a real estate agent to talk about what bank to use, or the strategies to structure your mortgage so that you can grow a portfolio, all of a sudden these people who are involved in the property game aren't necessarily the experts when it comes to that part of what we're looking to get knowledge on.
Yeah, and that's where you'd say real estate agent, absolute expert in their area. So if you're thinking about what do I offer for a particular property, or how should I sell my property in this specific area? Should I use a deadline sale or an auction, and how long should my auction campaign be? Real estate agents are the people who are absolute experts in that area, and you should listen to them. If your mortgage broker is giving you advice about which sale method to use, auction versus deadline sale, that's not their area of expertise, right? They are going to be the ones who maybe sound confident but don't have expertise in that area. Same in the reverse. If a real estate agent is trying to tell you which bank to use, or that it's going to be really easy to get a mortgage or something along those lines, again, that's not going to be their area of expertise. So we're always going to be wanting to not necessarily listen to the most confident person, but the person who has got demonstrated skill in that area, someone who specializes in that area. And it's similar if we think about a property manager, so when it comes to property management and finding a tenant, like often property investors come up to me and ask my opinion about various things, and I've got to tell them I've got no bloody clue about how to find a tenant in their specific area, if it's Gisborne or Taranaki. That's not my area of expertise. We talk a lot on the show about how do you find a tenant. We talk a lot on the show about what makes a good tenant, and we can look at all of the statistics. But at the end of the day, Andrew and I aren't the people on the ground finding tenants as property managers. We are now at the peak of Mount Stupid because we know just enough to be dangerous. So we might sound really confident, but we don't have a lot of competence in going out and finding tenants for properties. We've got property managers in our team who are experts in that, and so we can learn from them. And so I think it's really important to say, property manager, they are going to be absolute guru when it comes to finding a tenant for your specific property. Now, if you're talking to a property manager about, which property do I invest in? What's going to make the best property investment decision? That's going to be outside of their expertise. So again, I'm not digging on property managers or any one particular profession. But if we think about making a property investment decision, property managers, not to dig on any one profession, it's going to be a little bit closer to Mount Stupid. I'm not saying that they're stupid. I'm not saying that property managers can't make good property investment decisions. I'll be really clear on that. But advising on which property you decide to invest in, that's going to be outside of their expertise, right? And that's the most important thing to think about. It's same like you wouldn't go to your property manager for accounting advice because that's not necessarily what they do. But this also applies, Andrew, when it comes to even like people within a profession, so like lawyers.
Yeah, this is a really interesting one that I see all the time as well. So you might have an investor who wants to use a lawyer, and let's say, they've got, potentially a family lawyer that has known not only your parents, but, your grandparents maybe, they looked after the wills. Well, you trust them, right? So you're going to go to them with your sale and purchase agreement to buy an off-the-plans purchase? Maybe, maybe not. Or maybe your business lawyer where, again, they know all the intricacies of your business arrangements and how your assets are structured in trust. And then, again, you might be on the other side of it where you say, hey, look, I just want to use a conveyancing lawyer that's going to push this through because I want to spend as little as possible on any of those legal costs. None of these are necessarily the right fit because, again, all of these people arguably can do the job that you're looking to achieve, but when it comes down to actually getting the right and thorough advice, that's when you need a specialist property lawyer, someone that's actually handled a lot of these types of transactions. And I do see this mistake being made a lot of the time.
And the main thing is that even though lawyers are experts in the law, because it's even more specialized, your family lawyer might be, it's a bit of an unkind term, peak of Mount Stupid. It sounds like I'm being disparaging, but I know it's going to stick in your mind, so I'm going to keep using it. But your family lawyer might be at the peak of Mount Stupid when it comes to buying a new build off the plans, or doing a contemporaneous settlement if you are flipping or trading a property, or negotiating a commercial contract to sell X number of properties to the Ministry of Social Development or Kāinga Ora, those kinds of things, right? And it's tempting sometimes for all of us to wanting to be the saviour and, help as many people as possible. But what sometimes happens is lawyers and property investment advisors and accountants and property managers and everyone, we can be tempted to get outside our area of expertise and unintentionally overrepresent how good we are at something.
Well, I think if you're able to do something, even if you're not going to be able to do it in the best possible way, you probably just say, yes, I'm going to do that because I don't want to let someone down. And in fact, that was probably exactly the case with an investor that I'm working with at the moment. Their lawyer, I asked whether or not their lawyer was an expert in property transactions, and they said, I don't think so, but I'll ask them if they'll do this. They went ahead, lawyer said, yeah, sure, I'm happy to do that for you. And the questions that the lawyer came back with made me realise that this person probably hadn't handled many of these types of transactions, because they were really basic questions that probably someone should know better at being in the legal profession, but because it wasn't their day-to-day role, they just kind of not understood why things would be a particular way.
Well, do you know what'd be really good? Like if people it could be up front and be like, look, I'm at the peak amount stupid in that particular thing, and so even if I think about like negotiating a contract to buy land to develop on or something, I know nothing about that. I am at peak Mount Stupid. That's something that you would be more of an expert in and could advise on. Now, when it comes to the intricacies of the house price indexes and what sort of properties go up in value more and the benefits of using core logic over Ryan's and when you'd use Ryan's over core logic, that's going to be more my area of expertise. And thankfully, Andrew does ask me about some of these things, because sometimes I see, oh, no, that's not quite correct. And, little things that you think, oh, it's not quite right. So I think it's really important that we could all be upfront and say, hey, we're at the peak amount stupid of a lot of things. There are a lot of things all of us are really, really bad at, and we should be totally upfront with it. So how do you use all of this in practice? Because you might think, well, this is a great chat, but how do I use this in my property investment strategy? Well, I think the main thing I'm trying to get you not to do is that if you're talking to a lawyer, an accountant, a property investment advisor, don't just think, well, this person seems really confident. They seem to know what they're talking about, so I should absolutely listen to them. And see, I think you should ask yourself, well, what is this person an expert in? Or what should I listen to them about? So rather than thinking, okay, is this guy at the peak amount stupid or is he not? Saying, well, what is this person expert in? What can I get from them? Because everybody has got expertise. Everybody's got experience. Everybody's got an opinion to offer that's valid about something. And we just have to figure out what that actually is and what you can learn from them. So if I think about a property lawyer, I'm going to be thinking about, well, I should listen to them about what's in the contract. If I'm thinking about a real estate agent, I could ask them about, well, what's selling in the area and at what price for the specific area they know and work in, not ones that are maybe in a different city, or like the best way to sell a property. Even if I'm thinking about like family and friends, this is a great time to think about the Dunning-Kruger effect as well. So let's say Aunt Mavis said, I had dodgy tenants. Maybe the thing you ask yourself is, okay, there are some dodgy tenants out there. How do I avoid them? Aunt Mavis, what would you do again if you were going to avoid dodgy tenants? And again, she's just talking from her experience, so you might not believe everything she says, but you probably can learn something. If Uncle Bob says invest in Tauranga because property prices go up like crazy, I've made a lot of money, one thing to think is, okay, property investment can be successful, but what were the factors that were there in Tauranga when Uncle Bob bought there that helped him be successful? And so I think instead of taking people's opinions at face value, kind of digging into it more and thinking, what can I actually learn from them? If it's an accountant, what are we going to learn from them, Andrew?
We're going to be learning how cash flow might look on a property, or the kind of tax write-offs that you might be able to apply nowadays.
How should I own it? Is it going to be a trust or a look-through company? If it's a property manager, how am I going to rent the property? If it's a mortgage broker, which bank do I use? How do I structure the loans? If it's a financial advisor or maybe a property coach, you're thinking, well, how do I grow a portfolio and what sort of properties do I buy? I think it's really important just to remember, what is this person an expert in? That's what I'm going to listen to them about. And if I've got some other questions, find an expert in that area as well. Right, let's wrap it up there, but please don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. It really does help us get the message out to more people. Thanks for listening to the Property Academy podcast. I'm your host, Cedric Knight.
I'm Richard Nicol.
We're going to be back here tomorrow with even more daily strategies, tactics, and insights to help you get the most out of the New Zealand property market. Until next time.